Good morning, Griffins. Good to see you guys. I hope you're having a fabulous Wednesday. Second day back on the horse, so hopefully things are going well for you. If you had questions, just email me. I'm keeping it pretty simple for you guys this week. So yesterday, pretty easy day, just notes. Today, much the same. It's notes. Looks like my hair's a little jacked up. Let's fix that. Anyways, let's jump right into it, shall we? Go over a few. Check your email. It's Worship Wednesday, so Mr. LeBlanc has sent you a video. I'd encourage you to check that out. So when you get a chance, go in, watch his video for Worship Wednesday. He also shared a song by Dolly Parton. I absolutely love this song, so go in and watch that. I'd play it for you, but I'm afraid, Dolly Parton would sue me. Just ruin me. I'd never financially recover from it, to quote Joe Tiger or Joe Exotic, whatever the guy's name is. If you believe it, I still haven't even watched that. I got all this time in the world, and I still haven't watched The Tiger King. What's wrong with me? Let's pop over and do a short prayer. Same prayer as yesterday. I like this one, so we're going to Groundhog Day it and do the same prayer 2 days in a row. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Lord, help me to remember that nothing is going to happen to me today that you and I can't. I did this yesterday, or I screwed it up. That you and I together can't handle. Amen. That's a real Groundhog's Day moment for you. I screwed up the prayer in the same place. Might jump over to the chat, see how things are going. Good morning. Yeah, I hope you guys are having a good day so far. But I kind of slept in today, which is weird. Normally I'm a pretty routine-oriented guy, so it was weird. I slept in until about 8:30 this morning and woke up and was like, oh, I better get going. I got to stream this morning. Yeah, responsibilities up in here. All right, let's jump over to classroom. Today, easy day, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, macaroni and cheesy, etc. Take these slides and then watch this video. So here's the slides for today. This set of notes here is about technology deployed in Vietnam. We talked yesterday about the new supersonic jets that the United States Air Force and Navy were going to be using. So what about the guys on the ground? Well, it turns out that helicopters proved to be extremely useful in Vietnam. The jungle's very dense, and it's hard to drive around in, APCs, armored personnel carriers, trucks, tanks, and things when you're way back in the woods somewhere. So helicopters proved to be very useful at getting troops in and especially getting troops out who've found themselves in a dangerous situation and need evacuated. Helicopters still today in military strategy for the United States are used the same way. That they are very vital to our troop movements for the ongoing war in Afghanistan. A lot of troops are moved by helicopter rather than driving around in a Humvee or something like that. It does happen, but the terrain can be challenging, and helicopters can overcome terrain pretty easily. You don't need that big of an open area for a helicopter to land. The guns that we're going to use are faster, they're more accurate, and they're durable, and will be fully automatic this go round. Unlike the previous guns we were using in World War II, pretty much every infantryman would now be issued a fully automatic machine gun that could trigger between, it'd have a switch where you could go semi-auto, or you could switch it and go fully auto, which in World War II, most guys were still using bolt-action rifles where you'd fire, ching, fire, or like an M1 Garand or something like that, which you wouldn't have to bolt-action it, but it was still just semi-auto. The tanks and artillery that we're going to deploy are also new. Again, those government contractors, companies like Boeing, Boeing's not making tanks, but there's companies out there competing to have the best, newest stuff so that the government spends our taxpayer money on their new, beautiful tanks. Same with artillery. Reconnaissance technology, like those U-2 spy planes. You may remember the one that Francis Gary Powers was flying where he got shot down. Talked about that maybe like a month ago. U-2 spy planes aren't very useful when everything's under the trees, so you can't see what's going on. Satellites, same deal. They weren't giving us much information on the enemy, where they're at, where they're moving, where their bases are. So traditional intelligence, just asking around, actually proves to be quite useful. Stalking the enemy, sending out recon units to go stalk the enemy and find out their location, proves to be way more useful than spy planes and things of that nature. I guess I should say the unfortunate part about asking villagers is some of those villagers might be in the Viet Cong, and they would just openly lie to the American soldiers and say, "Oh yeah, go down the road over that way, and that's where you'll find them." And the troops would go that way, and instead, find themselves on a booby-trapped trail full of punji pits and claymore mines buried in the ground, things like that. So some of these villagers didn't, they weren't going to give you honest information because they were on the VC side. The Huey is the iconic helicopter of Vietnam. We deploy 7,000 of these Mama Jammas over in Vietnam, and they are the primary way that we transport troops because the terrain is extremely rough. It's much easier just to fly these guys in, and should one of them get injured or shot, then they could pop a smoke grenade. The Huey could fly over, see the smoke, come down, and pick you up. And even if there were trees in the way, they could drop a rope out of this thing and basically like medevac you, kind of like a modern helicopter from the hospital would. So Hueys are vital to moving troops. The war effort wouldn't be the same without these Hueys making sure that our guys could escape a dangerous situation and/or send in more troops to resupply and reinforce guys that may need more help. Might jump over to the chat here, see what's going on. Tiger King is so hilarious, especially if you like watching fools. Tim, that's one of my favorite pastimes, is watching fools. So that's why I like going out to the Walmart over in Wood River. You can see a lot of interesting folks at that Walmart. No offense to Wood River. Your grandpa has diarrhea. That is unfortunate. I hope he starts feeling better. Was the Huey named after anyone in particular? Let's, you know what, Michael? That's a great question. Let's look this up. Actually looked at this article yesterday. It's actually called the Iroquois after the Indian Confederation. But let's see. Nicknamed Huey. How did it get the nickname? Because it's designated HU1, which I guess sounds, Hugh 1. Well, that's actually not all that interesting. This is manufactured by Bell, so that's the defense contractor that got those taxpayer dollars for this design. It's a pretty good helicopter. It's still in service today, if you believe that. So, still actually used in some parts of the world. I don't think the United States still has it in service, though. No, something I'd have to hit up Owen Cortez, ask him that. He's my aircraft expert. All right, looks like everything in the chat's going fine, so let's get back in here. Sorry to screen share for no reason there. Long-range recon units like these, little two-man units, going out in the jungle, trying to track and figure out where the enemy is, proves to be a lot more useful than spy planes, because you can see this is densely forested stuff here. If a plane was flying overhead, they wouldn't be able to see these guys or the enemy, so spy planes, not as useful in this war. This is the CIA station chief in Saigon, which is the capital of South Vietnam, Pierre De Silva. So he previously worked in Korea with kind of mixed results, as we know. The standard infantrymen would be issued the things seen here on this picture. So you'd have your M16 rifle was the standard issue rifle you'd receive. You'd see these guys are carrying this one kind of out of the side here, but you can see these guys are carrying their M16s. You'd receive grenades, like explosive grenades, but you'd also get yourself some smoke grenades, which were very useful because if you got shot and needed a helicopter to come get you, you pop your smoke. And in that video I linked to you, they do just that, where a guy's shot, they pop a smoke, a helicopter comes in and gets that guy in the helicopter and evacuates him. You'd, I'll also have just a variety of supplies here. You'd have your tactical knife here, could also be, attached on your gun as a bayonet attachment. You're going to, have a variety of, gear to keep you alive, pouches to keep your rations in, things like that. Water jugs here. So this would be your standard issue. The M16 is going to be dueling with the Soviet AK-47, a gun that's still widely used around the world. That's because it's an extremely simple design, and these things just simply don't break. They're very, very sturdy, reliable weapons. That's not to say the M16 isn't reliable, but it's just not as reliable. An AK-47, you could run this thing over with a tank, bury it underground for a couple weeks, pull it up, and it'd still probably fire fully automatic with no jams. So, the AK-47's got a little more stopping power. I believe it's a larger caliber bullet than the M16. But the M16 has better accuracy, more range, and so that's kind of the duel there. Is more stopping power versus more accurate firing. Another gun we put out there in Vietnam is the M60, and this thing just did not have a good time in Vietnam. You can see it's quite heavy, and soldiers complained that it didn't balance right on your shoulder, so that it was super awkward to like walk around with this thing because it just didn't want to balance on your shoulder easily. Another problem the M60 has is that it does not like getting wet. That's not a good gun to have in the rainforest. If it starts raining and gets wet, it jams. That's not a good situation when you're fighting in a rainforest that your gun would jam if it gets wet or dirty. So the M60 has pretty poor results in Vietnam, honestly. The APCs and tanks deployed, the terrain's rough going. Occasionally you got to dig yourself out of the mud. This is it's a damp climate. And so the tanks performed, somewhat admirably in their role as an infantry support. But unlike World War II or even kind of in Korea, there's not going to be any tank versus tank battles because the NVA doesn't really use tanks. They have some old Chinese tanks, but otherwise the NVA doesn't really use tanks. It's because the NVA, much like the Viet Cong, don't like fighting in pitched battles out in the open. They would much rather ambush you at night and run back into the jungle than fight you out in the open head on. So not any tank versus tank battles, but these M48, I believe they're called Pattons. These tanks perform pretty admirably given the circumstance. Here's a Vietnam mortar squad. So these guys here are working together to load their mortar, which is going to launch that thing a long ways. So it's a big boy. It takes a couple guys to operate. So it's a field artillery squad. A squad would be the smallest amount of guys you'd have together, usually between 6 and 10 soldiers. This is a picture of a platoon, which is usually 3 or 4 squads together. So here's a platoon. They're part of a company, which is multiple platoons, which is then a part of a battalion, which is then a part of a division. At the division level, that's where you'd have 10 to 15,000 soldiers would be in a single division. So the 6th Infantry Division, I didn't look up the specific numbers, but if you did, you'd find that there's probably between 10 and 15,000 soldiers in that thing. These guys are going to build a brotherhood out there, fighting in a very tense environment against an enemy that you can't see, that's going to build some camaraderie. And obviously a lot of soldiers returning from Vietnam would have PTSD because they personally witnessed, one of their squad mates get shot, maybe, personally witnessed a close friend and squad mate die. Maybe themselves were, under serious fire and wounded. So a lot of soldiers coming back from Vietnam. It's unfortunate that there's not really any mental care for soldiers like there is now. That a lot of these guys come back and they are absolutely shell-shocked by what they've seen over there in the jungle. Westmoreland's strategy for the troops on the ground. We know in the air, his plan is Operation Rolling Thunder. On the ground, he's got a 3-phase plan. Go bump over and check the chat. See what's going on. All right, cool. Riley's got the info. Yeah, an AK does have a larger caliber, a 7.62. The M16's a 5.56 millimeters, so smaller bullet, but the M16, apparently, I have not fired either of these guns before. Kind of hard to get your hands on one of these, unless it was like aftermarket. They say the M16 had better range, but I wouldn't know because I haven't fired either one of them before, so it is what it is. All right, back over to Westmoreland. What's he got for us? Well, 3 phases. Step 1, stop losing. You're like, well, that's specific. Thanks, Westmoreland. you jerk. So step 1, stop losing. Step 2, mount a major offensive against the Viet Cong along that Ho Chi Minh Trail. He wants to search and destroy all the VC outposts and infrastructure along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Like, wow, that's a bold plan there. That's going to be rough going. And step 3, if the enemy persists and continues, then we'll just bomb them and return back to step 1. So that's his 3-phase plan. And he'd say, well, how do we know if the plan's working or not? He comes up with the body count system. He believes, kind of like Sherman in the Civil War, that he could wage a total war, and eventually we would kill enough of the Viet Cong and the NVA that they just wouldn't have any more guys. They'd run out of able-bodied fighters. This is a problem that Nazi Germany also kind of ran into in World War II. So he said, it's not about gaining territory. It's not about, we don't want to capture these outposts or capture the Ho Chi Minh Trail. We just want to kill as many guys on that trail as possible. And once we reach a magic number, several million troops, then we will have won in Vietnam. But we won't know unless we keep track of the number of Viet Cong that we're killing. So he wants to keep track of the KIAs killed in action. We start pumping these numbers a little bit, start juicing them, and actually start including civilian deaths and just say, well, I don't know, this old guy was probably in the Viet Cong. There's no way to know now because he's dead. So they start to actually kind of juicing the numbers artificially by including civilian deaths that probably, these people probably weren't in the Viet Cong. So these search and destroy missions were not about capturing these huts and hanging on to them for an extended period of time. It was about going in, interrogating these farmers living in small villages, figuring out, do you know anything about the Viet Cong? Are you in the Viet Cong? And obviously, if you were in the Viet Cong, your answer to that question would be, no, I'm not in the Viet Cong. So, unfortunately, there's not really any way to just tell if someone's in the Viet Cong because they don't wear military uniforms. They're just everyday civilians that are actively, fighting against the Americans. There's no way of knowing for sure. So when they did find a group of VC, the soldiers could just engage them as they saw fit. So if they felt like they wanted to go at them and take them on, they could. If they felt like it was too risky, they could, it would just be at a squad-by-squad basis or, platoon by platoon basis that the lieutenant or commander of that group would make if they wanted to engage or wait for more support or withdraw and then just have the Air Force bomb the crap out of that location. So search and destroy. That's our plan on the ground to complement Rolling Thunder, our plan in the air. So that's how it's going to work. And unfortunately, as we start sending more and more ground soldiers out to do these search and destroy missions, the death count amongst Americans and amongst the Vietnamese is going to start rising. So, yeah, the body count system, they would report that in the news. They'd say, good afternoon, Des Moines, Iowa. 33 Viet Cong soldiers were killed in action today. That was my best Walter Cronkite. Wasn't very good. But they would openly advertise the amount of Viet Cong we were killing. But then as the American body count starts rising, they start more focusing on how many Americans died in Vietnam today. So if you go in and check this video, again, I'm not sure if I play this, if I'll get flagged by YouTube for sharing copyrighted content. But go in here and these guys start taking some heavy fire.
Okay. Okay, would you roll in a 270 from the smoke, approximately?
So this guy's already saying Papa Smoke. So we need Papa Smoke, get a helicopter in here. The medic, he's gonna say, give me some cover and fire because somebody's been shot on the American side. He needs to go get to this guy.
All right, give me some cover.
So the medic's going to get out there, go in and watch this thing. I'm just going through it quickly and kind of jumping around because I don't know if I play too much of it if I'll get flagged. This dude here, he's been shot in both his legs. He was walking point and was the first guy the Viet Cong bumped into. So this is a platoon out in the jungle, in the thick of it, and you can see what it's like out here. 100-degree weather. You're carrying around this. This guy's got a massive M60, it looks like. Hope it doesn't jam. Oh. Anyways, that's really it for today. So I'll jump back over to the chat. No one said it has to be legal. Well, illegally, you can buy aftermarket firearms, obviously, but you'd still need the papers for them. Otherwise, I think that's a federal felony. Most gun crimes are. So who wouldn't want that? You do some jail time for that. I don't know if my internet is lagging. It's like my internet might have went down. Anyways, that's it for today. So hopefully you're still here with me, but peace out. Have a good rest of your day.